The fog lay thick across Ashridge Valley that morning, clinging to the earth like a blanket that the sun refused to lift. Rowan Delmont, now 68 and moving with the measured caution of a man who had endured too much loss, was spreading feed for his small herd of dairy steers. This farm, quiet and unassuming, was the last piece of his life that still felt familiar after his husband passed 3 years earlier. Every morning looked the same, smelled the same, sounded the same, until the distant groan of a diesel engine broke the silence. Rowan straightened slowly, blinking through wire-rimmed glasses as a massive livestock hauler lurched down the gravel road, leading directly to his barn. No trucks ever came here. His operation was too small, too private, too overlooked by the world. The driver jumped out before the dust had even settled, slapping the side of the trailer as if encouraging something inside to stay calm. "Morning," the driver shouted. His name, stitched into his cap, Red Orson. "Delivery for Delmont Farm." Rowan shook his head immediately. "No, sir, you've got the wrong place. I didn't order anything bigger than a bag of mineral salt this week." But Orson was already pulling out paperwork, the kind with crisp barcodes and official stamps that Rowan had never seen addressed to him before. "Says here, Ashridge Valley, Delmont Farm. Transport of one Brahmin cross bull named Ironheart. Came all the way from Wyoming. Been on the road 3 days." Rowan stared at him, bewilderment tightening his jaw. "Ironheart? I've never heard of him. Look at this place. It's a dairy farm. I don't have the facilities for a massive bull." But Orson just shrugged in that tired end of a long hallway. "Sir, my GPS brought me here. The address matches. Whether you ordered him or not, the bull's coming out. I ain't hauling him another mile." With that, he unlatched the trailer gates. What stepped into the morning fog silenced Rowan's breath. Ironheart emerged like a creature carved from storm clouds. Nearly 2,600 pounds of muscle Brahmin power, a towering hump above his shoulders, a silver-gray coat that shimmered like forged metal. It wasn't the bull's size that shook Rowan the most, it was the eyes. Dark, deep-set, burning not with anger, but with a sorrow so heavy that even the fog seemed to pull back in deference. Ironheart didn't snort, didn't charge, didn't display any of the ferocity the paperwork described. He simply stood there, taking in the unfamiliar quiet of the farm with the resignation of someone who had stopped expecting kindness. Rowan stepped back instinctively, not from fear but from awe. "Good Lord above," he whispered. This bull was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Nothing like the gentle dairy steers grazing behind him. Orson shoved a thick envelope into Rowan's hands. "Registration documents. Health records. All yours now," the driver said, eager to escape. "Good luck with him, mister." And then the truck turned around, gravel spitting behind its tires, leaving Rowan alone with an animal worth more than his land, and a problem he never asked for. Rowan skimmed the papers, dread building with each line. Rejected by 3 breeding facilities. Aggression toward handlers. Failure to perform breeding duties. Unsafe temperament. He looked up at Ironheart again, but the bull only watched him quietly, ears turning toward Rowan's trembling voice. Not wild, not violent, just tired. An hour later, Rowan's longtime friend and neighbor, Casper Weller, arrived in his rusty pickup. Casper, a seasoned horseman with a beard thicker than winter frost, climbed over the fence with the ease of a younger man. "Rowan Delmont," he shouted, eyes widening as he spotted Ironheart. "What in God's green valley is that doing on your land?" Rowan handed him the paperwork with a helpless shrug. "Apparently, someone thinks I ordered a rejected breeding bull." Casper scanned the documents, his brows rising with each page. "Rowan, this bull's sire was Iron King's Valor, a line believed to be extinct. This bull shouldn't even exist on a farm this small." Then Ironheart approached them, slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. As the bull drew nearer, both men saw it clearly. Rope scars along the neck, healed wounds on his flanks, marks of a life spent fighting against hands that never offered gentleness. Casper's voice softened. "They broke him, Rowan. They tried to make him something he wasn't." Ironheart lowered his head, not in submission, but in a quiet plea for understanding. And in that moment, the air shifted. Rowan felt it like a change in the wind, a feeling his late husband used to call destiny. Maybe Ironheart was never meant for the farms that rejected him. Maybe he was never meant to be a breeding machine or a livestock trophy. Maybe he was meant for a quiet farm run by a lonely man who didn't yet know he needed saving. The wrong delivery had arrived at the right doorstep, and Rowan's life, though he didn't know it yet, had just changed forever. 3 days after Ironheart's unexpected arrival, Rowan Delmont found himself settling uneasily into a new rhythm. He had moved cautiously around the bull, expecting at any moment the aggressive behavior described in the documents. Yet every morning, Ironheart stood quietly by the pasture gate, as if waiting for Rowan to appear, observing him with those calm, searching eyes that carried more depth than most humans Rowan knew. Still, uncertainty coiled inside him. No matter how gentle the bull appeared, the paperwork didn't lie. Or so Rowan believed. Until the day Ironheart rewrote everything Rowan thought he understood. The incident unfolded in the lower pasture, where Rowan spent the morning repairing an aging section of fence. One of his dairy steers, an old brindled girl named Maple, had slipped her leg into a loop of forgotten wire. Maple panicked immediately, kicking and thrashing, her distressed bellows slicing through the valley's quiet air. Rowan rushed toward her, but before he could reach the frightened animal, a massive shadow moved into view. Ironheart, alert, ears forward, strode toward the commotion with surprising speed. Rowan's breath caught in his throat. This was it, he thought. Stress, noise, chaos. Everything that supposedly triggered Ironheart's violent episodes. Rowan braced himself, shouting, "Easy, boy, easy." But Ironheart did not charge. He did not rear. He did not lash out. Instead, he slowed his steps, lowering his immense frame as he approached Maple with the kind of deliberate caution one might use when approaching a newborn calf. He positioned his massive head near the wire, examining it closely. Then, with a calculated push of his horn and shoulder, gentle, precise, astonishing, he loosened the wire enough for Maple to pull free. Not once did he bump her. Not once did he panic or flare in aggression. Once Maple limped safely away, Ironheart stepped back, giving her space to regain her balance. Rowan stood frozen, unable to reconcile what he had just witnessed with the bull's terrifying reputation. "I'll be damned," he whispered, his voice trembling with awe. "You're not dangerous. You're aware." Ironheart turned his head slightly, as though acknowledging the old farmer's realization. Word of the incident traveled faster than any rumor ever had in Ashridge Valley. By noon the next day, trucks began pulling into Rowan's driveway. First came Virgil Marsh, a seasoned cattleman who had raised longhorns for 40 years. Then came brothers Hobie and Carl Jenkins, who ran the largest Angus herd in the county. Even a group of young farmers from the Eastern Ridge arrived, all of them armed with coffee thermoses and skeptical expressions. "We heard you got a killer bull turned guardian angel," Virgil said, stepping out of his truck. "Got to see this miracle myself." When they found Ironheart grazing among the dairy steers, the reaction was unanimous confusion. "I've seen a lot of Brahmins," Carl muttered, "but never one that stands still while cows eat around him like he's their babysitter." They watched Ironheart for nearly an hour. Not once did he display the high-tension dominance behaviors bulls were known for. Instead, he moved only when the steers moved, almost like he understood their comfort mattered. By afternoon, Casper Weller returned, bringing Dr. Julian Crest, the county's most experienced large animal veterinarian. Dr. Crest carried a thick folder of Ironheart's medical files, which he flipped through as he studied the bull from a safe distance. 3 behavioral write-ups for aggression, he murmured. Refusal to mount cows. Destroyed handling equipment. Broke 2 gates. He looked up perplexed, but nothing about his environment. No notes on how he was housed. No notes on stress levels. No notes on conditions. Casper folded his arms. In other words, they blamed him without looking at what might have caused it. Dr. Crest nodded slowly, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. These scars, he walked closer to the fence. Ironheart did not move. Rope burns. Flank abrasions. Old lesions from electric prods. I've seen this pattern before. When bulls are mishandled or restrained improperly, they develop fear responses. They defend themselves because they think they must. If Ironheart lived in stress, chaos, or constant confinement, the vet paused, watching Ironheart lower himself into the grass with a soft grunt. Then he wasn't misbehaving. He was surviving. Rowan swallowed hard. For the first time, anger flickered beneath his ribs, not at Ironheart, but at whoever had written him off as defective. As the vet and onlookers continued to observe, something unexpected happened. Ironheart, who had been lying peacefully, rose slowly and walked toward Rowan with careful steps. The crowd fell silent. Rowan stood still, both hands at his sides. Ironheart extended his neck and gently nudged Rowan's palm. The old farmer felt the bull's warm breath wash over him, steady and trusting. A gesture of connection. A gesture that shattered every scientific note, labeling him as a monster. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Dr. Crest exhaled sharply. Rowan, I don't think this bull is aggressive at all. I think he's one of the most emotionally aware animals I've ever seen. That evening, when the visitors finally left, Rowan leaned against the fence and watched Ironheart graze under the amber glow of sunset. The bull paused, lifting his head as if sensing Rowan's gaze, and for a moment, man and animal regarded each other with an unspoken agreement, one forged not from necessity, but from recognition. Rowan whispered, "Maybe you didn't come to the wrong farm after all." Ironheart blinked slowly, the way creatures do when they trust you. The bull's terrifying reputation had evaporated in a single day, and Rowan's life was about to grow more complicated and more meaningful than he had ever believed possible. The morning after Ironheart saved Maple, Rowan's farm felt different, quieter in some ways, heavier in others. Rowan found himself watching the bull with a mix of admiration and dread. The admiration came from Ironheart's unmistakable intelligence. The dread came from a phone call he kept avoiding. The paperwork left by the transporter listed a number belonging to Harbrook Genetics, the Wyoming breeding facility that originally owned Ironheart. Rowan knew he had to call eventually. Bulls didn't just get delivered across state lines without someone somewhere expecting something back. By late afternoon, Rowan gathered enough courage to dial the number. After 3 rings, a gruff, impatient voice answered. Dane Harbrook speaking. Rowan cleared his throat. This is Rowan Delmont from Ashridge Valley, Tennessee. I believe there's been a mistake regarding the delivery of a Brahmin cross bull named Ironheart. A long pause, then a sharp exhale. Mistake? Hell no. That bull was a liability. My paperwork says delivered to your farm, which means he's out of my barn, out of my insurance, and no longer my damn problem. Rowan stiffened. With respect, sir, your bull was dropped here without my consent. I can't just. Harbrook's voice cracked like a whip. Mr. Delmont, that animal nearly took down a handler. He refused every mounting station we put him in, cost us thousands in medical bills, and broke 2 reinforced gates. We were planning to send him to liquidation. Someone misfiled the destination. Frankly, I don't care. You got him now. Move him to slaughter or keep him as a lawn ornament. Not my concern. Rowan's stomach twisted. The call revealed more about Ironheart's suffering than any document could. Liquidation, he whispered. He's not aggressive. He's traumatized. Harbrook scoffed. Sir, bulls aren't pets. They're tools. When a tool breaks, you replace it. Good day. The call ended abruptly, leaving Rowan gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles blanched. Ironheart, lying under the sycamore tree nearby, lifted his head at Rowan's trembling voice. Something inside the old farmer hardened. If the world saw Ironheart as disposable, then Rowan would do the opposite. That night, he called Harbrook back. I want to buy him, Rowan said before the breeder could speak. A stunned silence followed. Buy him? Mr. Delmont, why the hell would you want a bull who failed every breeding metric? Rowan looked out the window at Ironheart grazing peacefully with the dairy steers. Because he deserves a life where he isn't treated like a broken machine. Harbrook let out a low laugh. Fine. Papers say he's worth 5,000 at salvage weight. Pay that, and he's yours. Rowan agreed. But when the bank transfer processed the next morning, the consequences arrived faster than he imagined. His estranged son, Trace Delmont, called before Rowan even finished breakfast. "Dad, why the hell am I getting notifications that you withdrew $5,000 for a bull?" Trace's voice carried the sharpness of a son who believed he always knew best. "You're nearly 70. You're alone. You can't manage an aggressive animal that weighs more than a pickup truck." Rowan braced himself. "He's not aggressive, Trace. He's misunderstood." Trace scoffed loudly. "Oh, great. Now you're romanticizing livestock. Dad, this is dangerous. I'm coming down there." Hours later, Trace's black sedan rolled up the driveway, polished and severe like the man driving it. Trace stepped out wearing a tailored gray jacket completely out of place on a farm. He walked toward Rowan with the urgency of someone ready to stage an intervention. "Where is he?" Rowan gestured toward the pasture. Ironheart stood in the sunlight, completely still, watching the two men with a serene curiosity. Trace froze. "That is the bull. The one marked dangerous." His voice cracked between disbelief and fear. Rowan nodded. Trace watched Ironheart for several minutes, unable to reconcile the peaceful giant with the terrifying reports. "He isn't behaving like a bull at all," Trace said quietly. "He's behaving like he understands." As if to prove the point, Ironheart approached the fence where a young border collie pup, belonging to one of Casper's ranch hands, was chasing butterflies. Instead of asserting dominance, Ironheart gently nudged the puppy away from a thorn bush, using the side of his massive head with near-surgical precision. The pup rolled over, unhurt, tail wagging wildly. Trace stared. "He protected the dog?" Rowan smiled softly. "He protects everything he understands isn't a threat." Before Trace could respond, Casper's truck pulled up carrying Dr. Leon Vass, a tall, bespectacled professor from the University of Georgia's Department of Livestock Genetics. "Mr. Delmont," Dr. Vass said, adjusting his glasses, "I came because Casper told me something extraordinary. If this bull is truly Ironheart, then he may be carrying a genetic profile believed extinct." Trace's brows shot up. "Extinct. Deadvoschnidid. A rare intelligence marker strain. Bulls with these markers show advanced problem-solving, memory retention, and emotional awareness. They learn like canines. Some even like primates." Rowan glanced at Ironheart, who lifted his head proudly, as if understanding the moment. Trace exhaled slowly, the weight of his earlier assumptions melting away. "Dad, I think you made the right choice." For the first time in years, Rowan saw something in his son's face he thought he'd lost forever: respect. And because of a bull the world called defective, a family long divided by grief and pride had quietly taken its first step toward healing. The transformation of Rowan's quiet farm into the center of something far larger began slowly, almost invisibly, like the first whisper of a storm building behind distant hills. For a day or two after Dr. Leon Vass's revelation, the valley remained peaceful. Ironheart grazed among the dairy steers. Trace stayed longer than planned, and Rowan felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt since before his husband passed. But peace is a fragile thing, especially when the world hungers for what it does not understand. The first intrusion came in the form of a single white pickup truck bearing the green emblem of the Tennessee Agricultural Review Board. Two inspectors stepped out, carrying clipboards and looking around with interest that made Rowan uneasy. "Routine evaluation," one said with a tight smile that convinced no one. "Just a follow-up on an unusual transport report." But Rowan could tell they weren't there for him. They were there for the bull. Ironheart watched them from the pasture, ears tilted, posture alert but composed. The inspectors took notes, snapped photos, and left without much explanation. Rowan tried letting it go. But the next morning, a news van appeared, and then another. By noon, 3 different local stations were parked outside his gate, reporters leaning against their vehicles like vultures waiting for their feast. Trace stepped outside with irritation brewing in his eyes. "Dad, this is getting out of hand. Someone must have leaked something." Rowan didn't have to wonder who. Dr. Vass was a brilliant man, but academia thrived on breakthroughs. Even whispers of a genetically exceptional bull were enough to stir frenzy. And Ironheart, standing tall under the sun, regal despite his scars, was the kind of creature who turned whispers into headlines. The following day shattered any illusion that attention would fade. A drone buzzed overhead just after sunrise, its tiny propellers slicing the quiet air like a surgeon's blade. Ironheart lifted his head, startled, nostrils flaring as the mechanical intruder hovered near the pasture. Rowan shouted, waving his hat, trying to swat the drone away, but it rose higher, capturing footage of the 2,600-pound bull below. Then another drone appeared, and another. Within an hour, 4 SUVs pulled into his driveway. Researchers from out-of-state universities, carrying cases filled with sampling kits, behavioral assessment tools, and tablet screens showing Ironheart's viral clips already circulating online. They spoke in quick, excited bursts. This bull's responses break standard aggression models. We need controlled testing immediately. If the genetics match, this could change livestock intelligence studies forever. They didn't ask for permission. They assumed they had it. Rowan planted himself between them and the gate, voice firm despite the tremor of panic underneath. No one touches him. No one approaches him. He's had enough of cages and strangers. The eldest researcher, a polished man with silver hair, adjusted his glasses. Mr. Delmont, with respect, this animal may be the key to unlocking a new understanding of cognition in large mammals. You don't have the facilities to manage testing. He belongs in a controlled. He belongs where he feels safe. Rowan interrupted, jaw tightening. And that's here, but it was too late. Ironheart was no longer just a bull. He had become a symbol of scientific possibility, of genetic rarity, of potential profit. And people couldn't resist symbols. That afternoon, Ironheart's demeanor changed for the first time. The bull stayed close to the fence line, watching the road with restless eyes. When another group of reporters appeared and began shouting questions through the fence, Ironheart stepped back, trembling lightly, a subtle, heartbreaking tremor Rowan recognized instantly. Trauma remembered itself, resurfacing like an old wound. Dr. Vass arrived later that day, visibly concerned. Rowan, he's shutting down. See his breathing? Shallow, rapid. He's reliving something. Rowan glanced at Ironheart, who had pressed himself into the far corner of the pasture, facing the hills as if wishing he could disappear into them. What did they do to you before you came here? Rowan whispered, voice cracking. Dr. Vass looked away. If he was handled aggressively, restrained, forced into repeated breeding enclosures, bulls develop panic responses. Their bodies remember even when the world forgets. As the sun dipped behind Ashridge Ridge, casting long shadows over the farm, another call came. The caller ID read, Corbin Ledger, Ledger Ranch Holdings. Rowan hesitated before answering. Mr. Delmont, came a voice smooth as polished steel. I hear you're harboring something quite remarkable. That bull of yours, Ironheart, has caught my attention. Rowan's shoulders tensed. He's not for sale. Corbin chuckled, a low, confident sound. Everything is for sale. I'll start at 200,000. Rowan nearly dropped the phone. No. Corbin's tone sharpened. Then name your price. There isn't one. A long silence stretched before Corbin responded in a voice colder than the Wyoming snow Ironheart once endured. You're making an emotional decision over a livestock asset. That bull could change my entire breeding program. I advise you reconsider. Rowan hung up without another word. But that night, as Ironheart lay under the sycamore tree, breathing heavily from the day's commotion, Rowan realized something painfully clear. The world would not leave this bull, or his quiet farm, alone. Ironheart's existence had become a beacon, a rare creature whose gentleness exposed the harshness of the world around him. And Rowan knew the war for Ironheart's future had only just begun. For the next 48 hours, Rowan Delmont barely slept. The farm that had once been a quiet refuge, a place where wind whispered through tall grasses and sunrise painted peaceful colors across the hills, had turned into something unrecognizable. Each morning brought new cars on the road, new drones in the sky, new faces pressed against the gate. Ironheart, who had found peace in Rowan's Valley, was suddenly surrounded by a world that refused to let him remain simply a living creature. He had become a headline, a curiosity, a prize. Trace did everything he could to shield his father from the noise. He moved hay bales to block sight lines, posted hand-painted "No trespassing" signs, even parked his truck sideways at the driveway entrance. But people climbed fences, pushed through brush, hid behind trees with cameras. The worst offenders came at night, strangers with flashlights scanning the pasture as if Ironheart were treasure they might steal. Rowan spent those nights on the porch, shotgun resting across his lap. Not to use it, but to make a point if he had to. Ironheart's silhouette stood motionless in the moonlight, the great bull watching the hills as though trying to convince himself the world was still bigger than the humans closing in around him. By the third morning, Ironheart's behavior had changed drastically. He refused his feed bucket, choosing instead to keep his distance from barn. His walk had lost its easy confidence. Each step seemed cautious, heavy with memories of confinement. Rowan watched him from the fence, heart sinking. It had taken barely a week for a flood of outsiders to unravel everything several weeks of peace had built. Dr. Leon Vass arrived again, this time looking grim. "Rowan, this isn't sustainable." His stress indicators are rising again. You can see it in the way he holds his head, tilted, alert, braced for impact. He won't go back to the way he was in Kentucky, but he's slipping. Rowan's jaw tightened. "I know. I can feel it." He's scared. They're turning his pasture into another cage. Trace, overhearing, crossed his arms. "So what are we supposed to do? Run off every scientist and billionaire who wants to own a piece of him? Take turns guarding the gate? He's a bull, not some artifact in a museum." Leon hesitated, then spoke quietly. "There is one option. File for emergency livestock protection status. It would make Ironheart legally untouchable. No studies, no acquisition attempts, no forced relocation without your consent." Rowan blinked. "I didn't even know that existed." "It rarely gets used," Leon admitted. "Almost never for cattle. But Ironheart is unique. His case might qualify." Before Rowan could respond, tires crunched on gravel. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the end of the driveway. Out stepped Corbin Ledger himself, broad-shouldered, immaculate coat, boots polished to a shine that didn't belong on a ranch road. 3 men followed him, each looking more like corporate security than ranch hands. Rowan's stomach tightened. Corbin didn't wait to be greeted. He strode forward as if he owned the ground beneath him. "Mr. Delmont," he said with a tight smile that felt like a blade wrapped in velvet. "I thought it best to speak in person. Phone calls can be so limiting." Trace stiffened beside his father. "You need to leave." Corbin brushed off the remark as if swatting a fly. "I've come to present a final offer. $300,000, cash, for the bull." Rowan didn't flinch. "He's not for sale." Corbin's smile cooled several degrees. "Rowan, this animal is the greatest asset the breeding world has seen in 15 years. His genetic potential. His value isn't measured in what he can produce for you," Rowan snapped. "His value is in finally being treated like a living creature instead of a machine." Corbin's eyes hardened. "You're making an emotional decision. I'm offering a lifeline. Most ranchers would kill for this amount." "Most ranchers don't have Ironheart standing in their pasture," Rowan said. "And maybe that's why they wouldn't understand." For the first time, Corbin's mask cracked. "Keeping him here is irresponsible. You don't have the facilities to protect him. Reporters can get in. Scientists can get in. And when he hurts someone, because stressed bulls always do, the blood will be on your hands." Ironheart, hearing the raised voices, lifted his head. The bull's massive frame tightened, breath puffing through the cold morning air. He didn't charge. He didn't roar. He simply watched, recognizing danger in the tone of the humans gathered. Rowan stepped between Corbin and the pasture. "You don't speak for him. You don't speak for this land. You have no authority here." Corbin took a step closer, eyes narrow. "Then consider this a warning. If you won't sell him willingly, someone else may decide for you." Trace moved so fast Rowan barely caught his shoulder. "You're threatening my father on his own land?" Corbin raised a hand, signaling his men back. "Not a threat, a reality. That bull is already in half a dozen reports and research proposals. You're outnumbered, and you're outmatched. Rowan's voice lowered to a quiet, resolute rumble. Get off my property. Corbin held Rowan's gaze for a moment longer, a silent battle of wills, then turned sharply and walked back to his SUV. This isn't over, he said before the door slammed shut. The vehicle rolled away, dust rising in its wake, leaving only silence behind. Trace exhaled. Dad, he's gonna come back. Maybe not him, but someone like him. Rowan looked toward Ironheart, standing alone in the far end of the pasture, as if bracing against an invisible storm. I know, Rowan said softly, which means we have to be ready. For the first time since Ironheart arrived, Rowan felt fear not for himself, but for the bull who had finally found a home, only to have the world try to tear it from him. The valley was no longer just a sanctuary. It was becoming a battleground. Rowan didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. The house felt too quiet, too hollow, the kind of silence that made a man aware of every decision still unmade. He sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold, staring at a stack of papers Leon had dropped off. The emergency livestock protection forms, the legal clauses, the outlines of what rights Ironheart would gain under such a status. It wasn't simple, it wasn't quick, and it wasn't without consequences. Trace found him there at sunrise, the kitchen washed in pale gold light. Did you rest at all? He asked gently. Rowan shook his head. Not much to rest from, he murmured. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Corbin Ledger's voice like a saw in the back of my mind. Trace poured himself coffee and sat across from him. Dad, we can fight this. Whatever it takes. Rowan gave a tired smile. You're young. You see obstacles and think strength is enough. But men like Corbin, they don't fight with fists. They fight with influence. Lawyers. Money. They don't need to break in. They just break you. Trace didn't argue. Rowan wasn't wrong. Ledger Ranch was practically an empire. They had entire departments dedicated to acquiring livestock, managing conflicts, negotiating deals. Rowan had himself and his son. It wasn't a fair fight. But when they stepped outside, all doubts faded in an instant. Ironheart stood at the fence line, waiting for them, his massive frame silhouetted against the rising sun. His breath plumed into the cold morning air like smoke from a furnace. His ears twitched toward them, and he let out a deep, soft rumble the moment Rowan approached, a sound that had become something of a greeting between them. Rowan rested a hand against the bull's cheek, feeling the warmth beneath his coarse hide. Ironheart leaned gently into the touch, the weight of him grounding Rowan more than any words could. They think you're dangerous, Rowan whispered. But they don't see this. They don't see you. Ironheart blinked slowly, the trust in his posture unmistakable. It was a silent answer, but Rowan heard it all the same. Leon arrived mid-morning, his boots muddy, his jacket dusted with hay. Rowan, he said as soon as he stepped out of his truck, I got word from friend at the county office. Corbin is pushing for a forced transfer order. Rowan stiffened. On what grounds? On grounds that Ironheart is a mismanaged high-value asset that poses a risk to public safety. Trace swore under his breath. He's never even seen the bull up close. Leon nodded grimly. Doesn't matter. He's influential, and he's desperate not to lose something as valuable as Ironheart. If the order goes through, they can remove him whether you agree or not. Rowan felt his stomach twist. So what do we do? Leon held up a folder. You signed the protection petition today. If it's filed before his order, it blocks everything. But Rowan, once you sign this, there's no going back. Ironheart becomes legally yours in a way that can't be undone. You'll be responsible for him for the rest of his life, and people will come after you for the rest of yours. Trace looked at his father, worry flickering behind his steady expression. Dad, this is a big step. Rowan didn't answer immediately. He walked into the pasture, crossing the grass slowly. Ironheart lifted his head, watching him with that uncanny awareness he always showed. Rowan stopped a few feet away and looked into his eyes, those dark, soulful eyes that somehow held exhaustion and hope in equal measure. You were sent here by mistake, Rowan said softly. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Ironheart stepped closer, lowering his massive head until his forehead rested gently against Rowan's chest. It was a gesture so deliberate, so filled with unspoken meaning that Rowan felt tears sting behind his eyes. A bull didn't do this. Not by instinct. Not without trust earned through patience and presence. Rowan placed both hands against Ironheart's face. If I sign those papers, I'm choosing you over my peace, over my safety, over money, over everything I thought my life was supposed to be. The bull didn't move, didn't waver, just breathed quietly, as if telling him this was exactly where he needed to be. Trace cleared his throat from behind the fence. Dad, whatever you choose, I'm with you. Leon waited by his truck, giving them space, but Rowan could feel the urgency in the air. Time was ticking, and decisions couldn't be postponed any longer. Rowan stepped back from Ironheart, wiping the corner of his eye. All right, bring me the papers. Inside the barn, Rowan signed his name with a steady but heavy hand. Each stroke of the pen felt like a vow, one he didn't fully understand yet, but knew he had to keep. When he finished, he pushed the papers toward Leon. Leon exhaled in relief. I'll file these immediately. But Rowan wasn't done. Leon, he said, voice firm, tell the county office one more thing. If Corbin Ledger, or anyone working with him, steps foot on my land again without permission, I'll consider it trespassing, and I'll handle it accordingly. Trace looked at his father with surprise, then with pride. Leon nodded solemnly. I'll make sure they understand. As Leon drove away with the documents that could change Ironheart's future forever, Rowan stepped back into the pasture. Ironheart approached again, standing close enough that Rowan could feel his warmth through the cool breeze. Looks like you're stuck with me now, Rowan murmured. Ironheart huffed softly, nudging Rowan with a touch so gentle it could have been a blessing. For the first time all day, Rowan felt something settle in his chest. Not fear, not doubt, resolve. He had made his decision. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Corbin Ledger had no intention of letting that decision stand. And the storm headed toward the Delmont farm would test every ounce of trust between a man and a bull who never should have crossed paths in the first place. The storm came 3 days later, though not the kind that rolls across the sky. This one arrived in unmarked trucks, county vehicles, and legal documents wielded like weapons. Rowan had been repairing a water trough when Trace shouted from the porch, Dad, someone's coming. Rowan wiped his hands and walked toward the driveway. Ironheart lifting his massive head in the pasture as if sensing a threat long before any human could. Dust rose in the air as 2 white trucks pulled up beside a black SUV. Rowan didn't need to see the driver to know who sat inside. Corbin Ledger stepped out with a confidence that made the very ground feel smaller. Behind him came a county enforcement officer and a man carrying a clipboard thick with papers. Rowan's stomach tightened, but he kept walking, Trace close behind him like a shadow refusing to fall. Rowan Delmont, the officer began stiffly. We're here to enforce a livestock transfer order under section. No, Rowan said calmly. You're not. Corbin smirked, stepping forward. Rowan, let's not play games. That bull belongs in an accredited facility, not on a patch of land with a man who can barely manage a few cows. Sign the release, and I'll even increase my offer. Trace stepped forward sharply. He said no. Corbin ignored him. This is a business matter. Don't get emotional. Rowan's voice stayed steady, though his hands trembled slightly. You can waive whatever papers you want, Corbin. My petition is filed. He's under emergency protection. The officer shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Delmont, the county has not yet approved, and they can't enforce a transfer until they decide. Rowan cut in. So unless you're here to fix my fence or paint my barn, you can turn around. Corbin's jaw tightened. The mask finally cracked. You don't understand what you're doing, he said quietly. This bull is worth more than anything you have, more than this land, more than that house, more than your entire future. You're wasting potential because of sentiment. Rowan didn't look away. He's not potential. He's not a product. He's Ironheart. At the sound of his name, Ironheart walked slowly toward them from the pasture. Huge, calm, steady. Corbin stepped back involuntarily, despite all his talk of dominance. Ironheart stopped just behind Rowan, the morning sun catching the curve of his back, the scars across his flanks visible like history etched into flesh. The officer swallowed hard. Sir, is he safe?" Rowan reached up and placed a hand on Ironheart's jaw. "Safer than any of the men who have tried to own him." Corbin exhaled sharply. "This isn't over, Delmont." His entourage climbed into their vehicles, tension hanging in the air like a storm that refused to break. Tires spun on gravel, dust swallowed the road, and the trucks disappeared down the valley. Rowan let out the breath he had been holding. Trace shook his head. "Dad, that could have gone bad in 10 different ways." "I know," Rowan murmured, staring at the dirt road long after the trucks had vanished. "But if I didn't stand up today, I'd spend the rest of my life standing down." Ironheart nudged him gently, the bull's warm breath drifting across Rowan's shoulder. That single touch grounded him more than 1,000 legal papers ever could. The weeks that followed changed everything. The petition approval came faster than expected, mostly because Leon, seeing the danger Ironheart was in, personally presented it to the county board with a level of passion that shocked even himself. When the approval letter arrived, Rowan held it as if it were a birth certificate. "Ironheart Delmont," Trace said with a grin. "Has a nice ring to it." Rowan laughed, a real laugh, one he hadn't heard from his own chest since before Laura died. He's part of the family now, but life didn't simply return to normal. Word of the confrontation spread through the region, then through the ranching community, and finally through national agriculture networks. Some mocked Rowan, some called him foolish, but others, quietly, almost reverently, called him brave. Visitors no longer came to gawk. They came to learn. Dr. Vass helped Rowan convert an old hay barn into a behavioral observation center. Local universities sent students to study stress-free livestock handling. Farmers who once doubted Rowan now sought his advice. The Delmont farm, once overlooked and half forgotten, was becoming a place where misjudged animals found second chances. And Ironheart, he flourished. His coat grew glossier. His eyes softened. His steps became lighter, less guarded. He followed Rowan around the pasture like a silent guardian. And sometimes Rowan wondered, did Ironheart truly choose him? One evening, Rowan sat beneath the old pecan tree while Ironheart grazed nearby. The horizon glowed pink, wrapping the valley in a warmth that felt almost like a blessing. Trace joined him quietly. "Dad, you ever think Mom had something to do with this?" Rowan stared at Ironheart. Every day, they sat together in the fading light as Ironheart lifted his head and walked toward them. He lowered himself onto the grass beside Rowan, carefully, gently, resting his head against Rowan's boots. The weight of it, the trust of it, carved something deep and permanent into Rowan's heart. "This bull saved me," Rowan whispered. Trace nodded. "You saved each other." One last test came that winter. Snow fell unexpectedly early. The cold bit hard, and Rowan woke one morning to see Ironheart standing unusually still, frost on his eyelashes, his breath slower than normal. Rowan rushed to him, fear flooding his chest. Dr. Vass examined him in rushed movements. "It's the heart condition. It's progressing. Rowan, you might have a year. Maybe less. Maybe more. But he'll need care and calm, and you." Rowan swallowed hard. "He'll have all of that." Ironheart nudged Rowan once more, burying his face into Rowan's chest in a gesture that felt like gratitude and surrender all at once. And standing there, snow falling softly around them, Rowan understood something he hadn't realized until that moment. Ironheart wasn't meant to be his legacy. Ironheart was meant to be his healing. Rowan kissed the bull's forehead. "As long as you want to stay, you stay. No more cages. No more chains. Just this land and me." Ironheart closed his eyes peacefully. A rejected bull and a grieving widower, each unwanted in their own way, had found something the world rarely offered. A place where they no longer had to prove anything. A place where they could simply be. A place to belong. And that was worth more than every offer, every threat, every dollar Corbin ledger ever waved in front of them. Because some connections aren't bought. They're found. They arrive by accident. And they change everything.